Hey y'all, what is going on? What is going on? It's your girl, Melba Pearson, Melba for Miami, Melba for Justice, also known as the resident legal diva. And it is time for another Mondays with Melba. Woo, gonna give you some legal updates today, but there's so much going on. So I'm just gonna jump right in and do it quick and dirty. Okay. So, first off, breaking news. I'm sure folks saw this earlier today that Fox News has released Tucker Carlson. In other words, he been fired. So that was pretty shocking, most of all to him, because apparently he signed off on Friday, like, see y'all on Monday. Actually, no, we won't be seeing you again anytime soon. Definitely not on Fox News. Part of that, I think, and this is just me guessing, is that this may be tied to the Dominion settlement. So if you remember, Fox News and Dominion were in this huge lawsuit because of the fact that Fox News on air kept saying that there was fraud in the 2020 election and that this was connected to the Dominion machines. They basically make voting machines, right? So Dominion is like, excuse me, you're putting dirt on our name. We have an impeccable record. We have contracts all around the country. This is impacting our ability to do business because what you're saying is completely false and you know it. So there was going to be a trial. And on the eve of trial, they came up with a settlement. So basically, Fox has to pay like $787 million to Dominion, but the entire settlement has not been disclosed. So there could be other aspects, including you're going to need to fire certain people or something along those lines, that could have been part of the settlement that wasn't released. So that's a possibility. Also, there's the other lawsuit lurking out there with another company that also made voting machines. They are global. So Dominion only did machines in the United States. This other company does it worldwide. So they're going to go to trial because they're like, listen, this is not about money. This is, again, about our reputation and our ability to do business. So it's possible that Fox firing Tucker Carlson was also strategy for this next upcoming lawsuit to say, well, listen, one of the key people that was pushing this election fraud narrative is now no longer with the company. Can we work something out? So twofold, thought that was very interesting and a very interesting update. So we'll keep following that and see where it goes. Also, the Supreme Court ruled last week that there was going to be a continued stay on the rulings around the access to the abortion pill. So as we talked about last week, there were two conflicting rulings. A federal judge in Texas said that the abortion pill is not safe and that it should no longer be offered in the United States. A federal judge in Washington state said, nope, abortion pill is fine. It's been in use for, more than 2 decades. It's safe. The FDA has approved it, no issues. So it should continue to be able to be used in the United States. So the Supreme Court now has to step in and say, okay, can the abortion pill be legal throughout the country or should it not be? So now that they're thinking about it, basically, I'm using colloquialisms here, right? And I don't want to get like too in the weeds, but basically the Supreme Court's still thinking about it. So in the meantime, while they're considering what the ruling should be, they're saying the abortion pill is still legal in the United States. So there's no final decision with regards to that case as of yet. They've kind of, given themselves a few more weeks to decide. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. Also, another big breaking story from last week, Alec Baldwin. So if you remember, he was charged with 2 counts of 2 counts. One was involuntary manslaughter, as well as a charge for injuring somebody else on the set of the movie Rust. This was because he had a prop gun that actually had live ammunition in it instead of dummy ammunition. So what ended up happening is he was charged with the death of one of the directors and the injury of another director. And so the case was going to move forward. Well, the charges got dropped against him last week. If you remember when this whole thing first dropped, I said from the get-go there was not enough evidence against Alec Baldwin. Not because I'm a huge Alec Baldwin fan or anything like that. He's all right, but the reality is, from a legal perspective, he did not have the burden to make sure that gun was safe. That was the duty of the armorer. And her name was Heidi Gutierrez. And she also faces charges as a result of what happened. But again, Alec Baldwin is not a firearms expert. So how was he supposed to know there was a live round in the gun? He was told, he was relying on the expertise of others. And two people told him that the gun was safe to be able to use in that scene. So again, civil liability, absolutely. He already had to pay out to the families that, have been impacted. But from a criminal perspective, I always said there wasn't enough to go forward. So now the charges have been dropped against him. And so that's kind of the end of that saga in terms of Alec Baldwin. Now, in terms of other people on the set who, first of all, there shouldn't have been live ammunition on a set of that nature, because again, you want to avoid these types of mistakes and deaths from happening. So other folks may end up facing liability, but again, Alec Baldwin is not going to face criminal liability for the deaths in that case. So that's huge. All right, so there's that. Another thing, last week was just wild. I don't know if Mercury was in retrograde, but it's things were just crazy. We've had the horrible shooting of a young 16-year-old boy by the name of Ralph Yarl in Missouri. Many of you may have heard this. He basically went to go pick up his siblings. He turned down the wrong street by accident, knocked on the door, and instead of the person being like, hey, you've got the wrong house, the person didn't even open the door. They just shot him through the door. He was shot twice. Thankfully, he's going to recover. He survived. But again, that's incredibly traumatizing for him, for his family, and of course, for everyone else watching. And of course, the 84-year-old white man that shot him, because Ralph Yarl is an African-American boy, and this is an 84-year-old white man, claimed, oh my God, I was so scared for my life. There was this Black person at my doorstep. Sir, seriously? Seriously. Stand your ground is not going to apply here, okay? Because again, you have to be reasonable in your fear. You're behind a locked door and somebody rang the doorbell. Where's the fear, right? Come on, seriously, dude? And it even turned out more so that race was a bigger issue, because now the defendant's grandson came out and was like, listen, I stopped talking to my grandfather forever ago because he just sits there and has these crazy right-wing views. He's super racist. All he does is watch Fox News and OAN all day long. And, I cut myself off from him. So the grandson of the defendant is openly standing with the Yarl family being like, yeah, my grandfather's on some other stuff, right? So that's also going to play a role here, because now we're looking at not only looking at attempted murder, this could potentially be a hate crime, right? Because if you already hold these racist views and you're attacking a person because they're knocking on your door, ringing on your bell, that again, none of this makes any sense. His actions were not reasonable in light of what was happening at that time. So he was probably going to try go for stand your grounds or some permutation of that, but it's not going to fly. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that trial and see what happens there. We had a bunch of other shootings as well. In I believe it was in Texas. You had Peyton Washington, who was a cheerleader with her friends, accidentally got into the wrong car at a supermarket, apologized, oops, went to the right car. The guy gets out of the car, follows her, shoots up the car, injures her, complete madness. And then we have another case out of upstate New York where Kaylin Gillis was on her way to a party with her boyfriend and two other friends in a car, turned down the wrong driveway. Once they realized oh, wait, this doesn't look like the right place, and they're starting to do a U-turn to leave, the person in the house just started opening fire on the car. Again, dude, who you thought was coming to your house? This is rural upstate New York, okay? I'm like, I'm not understanding what people are on right now. Like, I really, I'm just like completely flabbergasted because again, why would you even react that way? Right? You would want to see, are they driving all the way up to your house? Are they getting out of the car? Like, definitely we need to know more about what transpired, but just on the face of it, this doesn't make sense. So again, stand your ground, self-defense, none of that's going to apply if you're in the comfort of your house and someone's at the end of your driveway. And again, rural upstate New York, this isn't like a short driveway like you would think of in the burbs. This is like a long driveway type of deal. And you're shooting people because they pulled up in the wrong. It blows my mind. So definitely my heart goes out to everybody that was impacted by all of these crimes, because this is just insanity. I mean, we really have to get it together as a country because this is just not okay. And the last one was in North Carolina, where a basketball like rolled into a neighbor's yard. The neighbor flipped out and just started shooting up the entire block. So it ended up injuring a 6-year-old girl, injuring her parents, injuring some other people. He apparently was out on bond in terms of a domestic violence case. So if there were red flag laws in the state of North Carolina, this would be something that would trigger it. So in other words, a red flag law is something that basically, if you're charged with a crime, or friends, family, neighbors are like, listen, this person is struggling with mental health issues right now, it gives the ability for the police to come and seize your weapons and hold them until the court says you can have them back. Right now, this is not the whole, oh my God, this is where they're coming to take your guns. This is there's grounds to show that you are a danger to yourself or others. It's not just kind of like, out there. So when you have someone that has a domestic violence charge where he basically attacked a woman with a hammer, right? You are clearly exhibiting violence. It is completely reasonable to remove any weapons from your home at that point, because again, let's let the case go through and, see what happens. But in the meantime, there's a strong possibility you're a risk again to yourself or to other people. Suppose you wanted to track down that woman and kill her to make sure she doesn't testify, that sort of thing. So I don't know what happened there. I don't know what the red flag law situation is in North Carolina, but again, that's why those laws are super important. We have them here in Florida as a result of the Parkland shooting. So again, I mean, this was a huge tragedy, and again, I have no clue what's going on in this country anymore, because it's just like people are just losing their minds. People are seriously losing their minds. And I don't understand what it is. And, our economy is decent right now. We have the lowest unemployment that we've had in forever. So it's not economics. So the pandemic's been over. So it's not that isolation and, we've been locked down for 2 or 3 years and don't know how to relate to people anymore. I mean, maybe it's fallout from that, but all of this is just crazy. But in each of the 4 cases that I just listed, rest assured, stand your ground, self-defense, none of that is going to apply. This is straight up attempted murder. In the case of Kaylin Gillis, murder. And, we're going to go from there. So again, my heart goes out to each of these families. This is just terrible to have to deal with or even have to think about. So there's that. And lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about what's happening in the Florida legislature. I've got the iPad has shrunken down to a larger iPhone. So that's where all my notes are. But I just wanted to give everyone a heads up on what's going on with regard to HB 999, which is the huge sweeping bill here in Florida that was going to basically overhaul what education looked like in public universities and public schools. Part of it included making it harder to get tenure, make it harder to keep tenure. And tenure is the thing that makes professors stay at universities, right? Because it's that protection to make sure that whatever research you're doing or whatever topics you're teaching, you're protected and you don't get fired just because you're talking about something that's politically sensitive or, people may disagree or whatever the case may be. So if this bill passes, and we're already seeing the fallout from this before the bill is even done, right? Because legislative session goes on for another couple of weeks. But if this bill passes, it's really going to impact the quality of professors as well as the quality of students that are going to come to Florida public schools. Because again, you can't keep folks, and I'm seeing it, personally in my day job. We all know that I work for a public university, and, we had a huge turnover in our department, like folks just leaving. Right. And you're seeing that throughout the university. You're seeing that throughout the public university system, because people are like, listen, if I'm not going to be protected, if I can't teach in a manner that's consistent with the research I've been doing and all of that, then what am I doing here? Right. Like, we don't teach just to give misinformation. You teach because you want to challenge students. You want them to think about different points of view. Another aspect of this bill that's so sweeping and problematic is the removal of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs from universities. And again, they're like, oh, DEI for short is divisive, it's racist, it's this and that. And in terms of it's somehow harming white students, when in fact, those diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are a way to bring people together and to make sure that people who are people of color, who come from maybe different backgrounds, who are LGBTQ, feel comfortable on campus and, are able to engage. It's a way to make the university better, and no student gets harmed by DEI efforts. So the talking points that are being spun as to why this is justified just absolutely make no sense and have nothing to do with reality. At one point, that part of the bill had been taken out because there was a concern about the Florida public universities losing their accreditation because of that. But apparently it got slipped back in at the last minute. So again, there's a lot of back and forth going on, but the key here is advocacy. I know that the Republicans have a super majority right now in the legislature, but at the end of the day, they still work for us, right? These are public servants that we hire and fire at the ballot box. So it's very important for each of us to reach out to our legislators to say, listen, we want to have top-notch schools here in Florida. We want the best faculty in the country to come here and feel safe and feel that they can teach in a manner in which that's, actual, factual, and consistent with, what the teaching standards are nationally. But they have to have that freedom to do so, and it shouldn't be controlled by the government. I mean, this is an attack on freedom of speech, which does not do anything for the students, right? That does not benefit the students in the long run. Students pay to go to college not to become narrow-minded, but to have their minds expanded and to, be challenged in different ways. And if you don't allow teachers to be able to teach in the way that will do that, you're doing the students a huge disservice. So, it's just, there's been a lot of bills this session. A lot of this is tied to the fact that, it's an open secret that the governor intends to run for president. As a matter of fact, we had some horrible rains in Florida in the last week, and we had severe flooding in Broward County to the point that one of the major cities in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, they're going to need to have a whole new city hall as a result of the damage from the storms, right? People's houses have been destroyed. Like, it's almost like a hurricane without it being a hurricane, but it's that level of flooding and damage. And yet, where's our governor? He's somewhere overseas talking about, I'm doing a world tour, when your own state is having a massive, massive crisis. Like, now's the time you cut your trip short and you come home and deal with it. You don't make a phone call to, and say, oh, hey, so sorry you're dealing with this. I'm just going to keep doing my world tour because I need to run for president. Like, where are your priorities, dude? Like, come on. People are suffering here. Like, people have lost their homes. Where's the compassion? It's just, anyway. And also, who's paying for those trips? I'm really curious because, apparently he's going to Israel, he's going to Japan, he's in Germany. Those flights aren't cheap. I mean, heck, just to get across the country now, flights are like, from Miami to, Portland or Seattle, you're knocking at $750, $1,000. So now you and your wife are going overseas. Is that taxpayer money? I've got questions. I've got questions. So there you have it. Quick and dirty legislative updates and legal updates. That's what's going on right now. I'm going to keep y'all posted as things progress. Again, this is the last push. You know, session's going to be over in about 2 or 3 weeks. So now this is the last flurry of bills and debates back and forth to see what's going to get passed. But this is where our advocacy matters. So make sure to call your legislators, email, do whatever you can to let your voice be heard, because there's so many terrible bills that have just been slammed through, again, because this is the governor's agenda. But we've got to raise our voices because we're the ones who are going to be the most impacted in the end. So next week, there is a very interesting program that I'll be engaging in called Freedom to Learn. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that next week. Also, Mother's Day is coming up soon, and it's time for Black Mama's Bailout, which is a time when organizations get together and try to bail women out in time for Mother's Day so that they can spend it with their children. Again, knowing that, you know, sometimes the issue is not that, you know, bail is so high, you just can't afford to get yourself out and fight the charges, which is one of the bigger issues with the bail system. So we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks as well. All right, y'all. Quick and dirty, but thank you all for tuning in. Drop your questions in the comments and I'll weigh in and respond and share sources as needed. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.